welcome B-Siders to a brand new episode of my podcast. I'm super excited, as I am every time I'm here recording an episode, no matter if it's solo, if it's guests, it's always exciting. However, today is a little bit extra special in a way because it's actually very close to home. It's sort of Aussie themed and it's about the Aussie entertainment industry, and it's about someone who's really passionate about that. And she will also share a little bit more, hopefully, about the reason why that's such a big passion for her. So let's dive right in. Let's not beat around the bush. I'm going to say hello to Renée. Hello, Renée. Thanks for joining me today.
Hi, Brigitte. Thanks for having me.
You're welcome. Thanks for coming on. I know it's going to be a really great and interesting chat we're going to have today. But to give everyone who's tuned in today a little bit of an idea who you are and what you actually do in everyday life, I'm just going to touch on a few points, and then you can maybe quickly add on a few things that I might have forgotten or I don't know. But you are part of a Australian startup called Six8, and
Correct.
and I'm gonna look at my notes here. So if you see me looking down, that's me looking at my notes.
Go for it.
And this is a company that's leading positive change in the music industry, which is awesome in itself. And you are very passionate about connecting music makers with music lovers. And I can hear Barry White in the background going, "Oh yeah." And your part in this whole Six8 team and family is you're the creator of opportunities and the experience manager. Now that sounds really intriguing. So help us out. What does that exactly mean? What do you do?
That's one of those wonderful names that you get to give yourself when you're in a startup world. It's like we don't want it to conform to some of these traditional names. So we do so many things. So we need something that encapsulates everything. So I work with a very, very, very small team. And it is, as you said, it's about connecting live music and creating more opportunities for there to be live music. So in my role, I do lots of things from talking and connecting with a lot of musicians and building a real community where we support musicians in their journeys, right through to working with venues and councils and helping them to find creative ways to use live music to bring people together. Right through to sometimes doing the accounts, and also trying to filter your way through startup world, which is interesting and exciting, and no day is ever the same. So yes, all it's about opportunities. Everything I do is about opportunities, and very much about building a community that is supportive and inclusive and wants to make a positive impact and change in an industry that is going through a lot of change at the moment.
Yes,
So
and
yeah,
hence,
that's a little bit.
yeah, and that's a great explanation. And I love the experience manager, which, music creates experiences. So I think it's a perfect fit for what you do.
Absolutely. Yeah, absolutely. We use technology in order to bring people together to help create these new experiences. And after all, we're very much driven by experiences as humans.
Yeah, absolutely. Totally. Now, before we dive into obviously all the things that you see and feel about what's going on right now, I'm sure everyone that's listening and watching today would like to know a little bit more. How did you end up where you are now? Were you always a music lover? Did that play a huge part in your upbringing, or how did that work for you? What do you want to share about that one?
Yeah, it's actually an interesting question because I've always been a huge music lover. But when you had that question there, I was thinking, okay, my history is so varied. I've worked in the oil and gas industry, I've worked in mergers, and I've got that very corporate background. And most people would be quite surprised to know that now I'm working in a music industry. But and it's more interesting as well because when I was born into a very conservative family where we weren't even allowed to listen to secular music. So that will give you an idea of the type of family. We've got a name for it, secular music. So that was kind of a no-no.
Mm-hmm.
that meant that we still wanted to listen to music, but we were very confined around my siblings and myself around what it was that we were allowed to engage with. To give you a little example, a friend of mine that I went to school with, who was also in a family with similar values, she had cassettes, yes, back in the days of cassettes on Peter Andre, and she was told, no, you're not allowed to listen to that, and she kept them, smuggled them. Eventually her parents found out about it, and she was grounded for an extended period of time. And that was kind of the environment. And what's even more interesting about that is, I think you'll agree with me on this, that live music, sorry, not just live music, but any music is actually a way for us to find our identity or explore our identities. There's a subculture that comes with music, particularly in your formative years. So having that constrained earlier in life really constrained me throughout my life. To actually today, it still does have impacts on my life. And I love music. Like, eventually over time, my parents got a little bit more relaxed. So I was able, sort of in my later teens, able to start to find out about musicians. So I went through a long period of time not knowing who Madonna was or Michael Jackson, and I'd heard these names, but I didn't know what their music was, unless you're in the supermarket and that kind of thing. So one of the challenges that I have today is actually still being able to listen to a song and connect it to who the artist is, particularly from my childhood. So we're looking at the 80s and 90s. Now I love music so much, and I'm a bit of a glut when I'm trying to associate songs and artists and connect to it and in the lyrics and understanding who sings what. But that's why I also find it really, really interesting that I'm now running a live music company, because for me, I can go into many situations and I do feel vulnerable and challenged that I can't actually go in with a sense of ease, because I'm always thinking, okay, what if I'm not going to know someone that they're going to reference? We've got a lot of jazz musicians. And so my fiance, who is a huge musician fan as well, and was also one of the founders of Six8, he knows so much. He knows everybody from all different genres and the backgrounds, but I don't have that. So it is something that I find interesting that now I have landed, also because he was a founder of Six8. So we had this natural progression that I stepped into the company, that I'm now running this company that I would never have thought of many, many years ago when I was constrained in what I was listening to. So yeah, that's kind of a little bit of a history about where I am now.
Yeah, it's funny you say that, like you don't know much about jazz or anything like that. I feel like we all have that, even if you're I call myself a music lover, and I couldn't tell you much about jazz because that's not a genre I listen to a lot. Or, lately I've come across a lot of spiritual singers. Some people might call it even, I wouldn't say religious, but it's like very spiritual aimed singers, and I had no idea they existed. Yet their music is really beautiful. Their lyrics are phenomenal. So I think as long as we're open-minded about it, who cares if you don't know everything about it? That's the beauty of music. It connects you to others. It allows you to have experiences. So I learned not to feel guilty about not knowing some artists or some genre very well. As long as you have an open heart and ear, I think that's all that matters.
Well, I think in my normal setting, like before running a company, then yes, I would have said it is what it is. And a lot of people used to joke with me, and they would play something, and like they all would have a laugh when I'd say, "Oh, I love this. Who is this?" And they go, "This is Aussie Crawl." And I'm like, "Oh, this is fantastic." They're like, "Renee, like this is like over and done with long time ago." So in those kinds of conversations, I feel comfortable. But now that I'm sort of in a company that is around music, not having the connections to sort of history and of musicians and songs and more of that intel, it is a challenge. But I know that I bring other value and a very different viewpoint. But yes, it is one of those interesting things.
Oh, I'm sure you do very well, considering. So
Thankfully, I have many other qualities and talents. So yes,
there you go.
that helps.
There you go. Now that's incredible. I love that kind of backstory. That where you are, how you got to where you are, and that you're still sort of willing to be open and learning. And I mean, it sounds like you're taking on a hell of a lot. Now, you thinking back, not thinking back, but thinking too, I'd rather say, the Aussie, maybe it's more specific about Aussie music, because I know I haven't really touched that yet on my podcast at all, I have to admit.
Yes.
Which is obviously something I might have to think about. So I'll remind the mate.
Yes, encourage that.
And is there anyone, I mean, obviously from your upbringing, you probably won't remember too many names, but currently, is there anyone that sort of tickles your fancy apart from the artists you have on your
Australian
books?
music?
Yeah.
Oh, no.
I know I put you on the spot now.
So you did. No, it's good because I was like, oh, the other ones I had time to prepare for. But so Tina Arena, she is an Australian artist. And I think she was probably, yes, I get kudos for that. She was probably the first Australian artist that I can recall listening to. But I think from my childhood, yeah, most of them were other names that weren't Australian artists at that time. Yeah.
Yeah. She's got a beautiful voice. I love her too. She's gorgeous.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yes, I think she was in line with a lot of the other artists that I loved. Like when I first was allowed to dip my toe into secular music. Sorry, even for me, I find it amusing. The likes of Celine Dion and Mariah Carey and Michael Jackson. That was sort of me dipping my toe into that, and I encapsulate Tina Arena in that with those big, beautiful voices. So
yeah, no,
now I have.
Yeah, go on. Sorry,
I was just going to say, now I have a lot more knowledge about Australian music, and probably more from who's a couple of suburbs over from you kind of thing, that real local emerging talent.
I was just about to kind of ask you that. Obviously, you have now really good sort of oversight on who's there and who's not been discovered yet, who might, should be discovered, and along those lines. And that's what kind of really spoke to me when we first started chatting, was the fact that these are actually musicians and artists who do exactly what music's supposed to do, I guess. Like it's forming memories, experiences, connections, and even just entertain. I mean, I don't want to degrade it, but sometimes you just want to be entertained. You don't want to think about anything else. You just want to be taken away from your daily life, and that's it.
Yep.
So from your experiences working with those musicians and feedback you get from people who actually have booked those, can you recall some stories that happened that kind of left kind of an imprint with you? Can you share a couple of those?
Yeah, well, I think I've definitely got lots of stories, and that's the exciting part of my role at the moment in being involved in this community, is that you get to see where people are creative with using live music in their lives. And as you say, discovering new artists in Australia, and there's some artists that I listen to and I'm absolutely awestruck myself around their talent. And I do think so many times, why hasn't this person been picked up by a talent scout? But some stories around live music and opportunities that some of our musicians have had. there's actually one when we first started, and this was actually before I first started with Six8, but the story was that one of our musicians was connected with a music lover, and he had proposed to his wife something like 30 years ago, and they had this song that was playing when he'd proposed, and he had recreated this experience at a restaurant and had connected with this artist to say, can you learn these couple of songs and come in and play that at the restaurant when I'm celebrating my anniversary with my life? And I was like, that is just such a beautiful moment, but it's also beautiful for the musician because they get to experience something that was in someone's life and continue to build on that beautiful memory that they had. And I absolutely love that. I thought that's a great way of being creative and utilizing local talent, but to sort of bring it into your own world and experience, which is what we love about music, isn't it? We love to connect to the emotion that it brings and those memories we create.
Absolutely.
We've had the another company that utilizes us. They had one of their staff members birthday coming up, and they asked if we could find a mariachi player to come and play mariachi music for their birthday just at work. And I just love that was, once again, being really creative and bringing an extra bit of magic for them to share at that moment. But one of my most favorite memories is actually one of my own, and that was through COVID. I was moving out. I was actually supposed to move up to where I'm now. I'm actually in Papua New Guinea now. And we were moving, but because of COVID, it sort of stopped me moving. My fiance moved up for 6 months, and I was in the midst of moving out to move up here. And I still had to pack up the house because that had already been committed to. And I just remember walking around we had this beautiful set of apartments in West End, and feeling how everyone was really down. It was Easter, everyone was down because of the COVID restrictions. And I was thinking, what is it that I can do to sort of help celebrate Easter for everyone? And then I thought, hang on a sec, I've got so many musicians that I've got access to. We've got like 1,400 musicians on Six8 all across Australia. I said, let me see if there's someone that's around here. Anyway, I put out the invite on our platform, and I got a couple of responses, and one of them was from a guy called Daryl James. And he goes, yeah, I actually just live in the next suburb. So I was in West End. He was at Highgate Hill, which was literally just up the road. He goes, I would love to play. So he came down, set up his gear. We rang the police and made sure that we could have him come and play. We were paying him, etc. So it was all him still working. And we had the most amazing event. We had all of our residents came out and stood on the balconies overlooking Daryl as he set up with his one-man band. And if you've ever heard Daryl, I'll give you the link. He is amazing. And for the next 2 or 3 hours, he performed, and everybody on the balconies were dancing and getting involved. And it was just one of those experiences that I'm getting goosebumps now, just remembering it. It was something that was so connected. Every single person was connected through this music, even though we hadn't been allowed to approach each other. And even after the event, and I'm sure that Daryl doesn't mind me sharing this, but he was supposed to go on a national tour. And because of COVID, all of that closed down. And so all of those things like bills and rent and that musicians would normally not have to pay when they're on the road all started to come in. And he's like, Renee, you have no idea. This was just a moment that helped me get through the next couple of weeks. And I was like, that was thrilling in itself, an eye-opener as well. But it was just, we were all nearly in tears from the emotion of this event. And I will send you a link because I've put it up on my Facebook years ago. And it's one of those things that you'll see everyone out dancing and the kids dancing and people cheering across the balconies. And those are the moments that I think are amazing.
Wow. Wow, that's incredible. I'm sort of trying to imagine that in my head right now, because I don't know if you've seen it, but during COVID, there were many videos shared of not obviously professional musicians mainly, but some people just learn how
Yep.
to play the piano or the guitar, and they just went onto their balconies. I think it was mainly sort of in Europe where you have probably like
Yes.
more sort of those complexes, and they were just
Yep.
playing music. And I thought that's exactly what you did, and that was just such a beautiful thing to do. It was really just, it felt like it was taking the mind of things away from the pandemic and just in a happier place and giving a bit of hope, and that's
And that's what it was. And I'd seen all of those as well. You could, in Italy, everyone's out playing out their trumpets and whatever instrument they have out the
yeah,
window.
exactly.
But the beauty of it in this moment as well was that nearly everybody was there wanted to stay connected with Daryl in some way. So there was CDs that were bought, and then there's people wanting to know when he was going to play a live gig coming up. And so he is now ingrained in all of our lives because of this special moment. And so we all follow him. And that is the power that we get through live performance, which, as much as it's amazing to have headphones and listen to music, it's these interactions when we're together
Mhm.
that are the lasting memories that we have, the
Yeah.
extra powerful ones, the extra magical ones.
Yes. Yes. Yeah. Beautiful. That's so true as well. I mean, I'm just trying to think back. There was a time when my mum worked in a nightclub, and it was not a huge one. It was more, maybe a couple hundred people or something would fit in. So still very big, but small on the
Yeah.
scale of things. And they used to have live bands, and the stage was like there, and you could literally stand in front of them. There was no, it was just the dance floor was right there. So like you said, the experiences and the memories you can form because you can literally connect with that musician or that band, it's just magical. You can't, it's so hard to describe, so you have to kind of
Yeah.
experience it to understand what it's like. Yeah. Wonderful.
And
Yeah.
I think that's what we've had a lot in the past. If you used to think of the bands that would play at the local pub or on bus in their early days, anybody
Mm-hmm.
who saw them in those moments, they're the ones that
Mm-hmm.
are connected to them and connected to that story. And they're
Mm-hmm.
the moments that we need to protect. And they're the moments that, unfortunately, um, are
Mm-hmm.
also in jeopardy and vulnerable at the moment to the future.
Yeah, I was about to ask you that. And even though I know my podcast is mainly about, our personal experiences with music and how we connect
Mm,
to it, but I do feel like if we don't, how can we experience that and how can we make those memories with music if we don't have the opportunity to start maybe small, meaning on a smaller scale, and connect with local artists or in smaller venues where you really can form that memory and that connection to live music. I've always wondered after COVID how, and obviously during COVID, the whole entertainment
mm,
industry just suffered so greatly. How is it
mhm.
now, and what do you feel we all could do to keep that kind of legacy going so that we still have that opportunity to form those special memories and experiences?
It's a good question because COVID gets blamed for a lot of things. Unfortunately, I think in the music industry, it has only accelerated what was already happening. Now,
Mm.
there's good and bad things out of the changes that are happening in the music industry at the moment, and those changes do impact, as your listeners love music and their connections to it. So it will potentially impact them in the future unless there's some things that do change
Mhm.
now. And just to give you a little bit of background information around how the landscape of music is changing,
Mhm.
and also what we can do to ensure that we are protecting the future. So streaming platforms are amazing. We've got this opportunity to have all of the history of music at our fingertips, which is an incredible privilege that we get to experience today. And that is something that I think we should keep. Um, But we just need to understand how we can then look at what are the counter issues that are coming from it. Some of those issues are that we've got musicians have lost access to revenue. And if people aren't clued into that story around, well, they still get paid through these streaming services. Well, yes, you can make money from them if you are a big name, a well-made, known name, but for budding artists, emerging artists, even artists that have been performing for 10, 15 years, they're not going to earn anything. I think, to give you, my stats are they're a little out of date, but not too much. To make about Australian $2,800 for a musician, their song has to be downloaded somewhere between 1 million to 4 million times, depending on the platform, be it Spotify or YouTube or music.
Wow.
So in countries, I know, right? It's crazy. So you're like, really quickly, you start to understand that revenue stream where artists could sell CDs. That's no longer exists for them to tap into. So that revenue's out. So how do they replace that? Because at the moment they're earning about the same amount as they were 15 years ago. The sad thing is that Australia spends, before COVID, on average, we were approaching the $2 billion mark on music, just in Australia alone. So we've got we're spending, and it's going up on music, but the musician is earning the same amount as they were 15 years. We've got some issues. We need to balance it. We're in this in-between land. And at the same time, it's not just revenue, it's opportunities. So busking was a great way for emerging artists and even artists that had been performing but were for a while but writing new material. They could go out, they could try it, see what audience's response was, and have that confidence to then take it to the next level, to paid gigs. And that's kind of evaporated as we've become a cashless society. So that's why I'm saying we really are living in this in-between world at the moment. And then one of the ones that people don't also think about is a lot of instrumentalists. They would play with soloists, but because everything's becoming digitalized, there's some amazing new equipment out there. You can have a soloist that sounds like a full band now with his loop pedal. But what does that mean to instrumentalists, and how do they continue to also build their revenue stream? So they're kind of some of the issues and the changes that are happening in the landscape. So if we look at that, what we see is that musicians earn 75% of their income comes from live performance. So we just need to make sure that there's enough opportunity for musicians to be performing live more. It's simple. So that's why we in Six8 are really looking to lead that change and create a behavioral change in the industry that enables people to get creative. And hey, we live in a time of creativity. And if COVID showed us anything, it was that we always want to go back to the arts. If there's a challenge in our life, if there's something happening, it's the arts that actually is where we find that emotion, that experience.
Yep. Yeah. That's really good background info, and hopefully it gets a lot of people thinking a little bit more about. It's great if we got now big concerts again of big artists coming to Australia especially, but I guess it happens everywhere in the world.
Yeah.
But how are we gonna, because even the big artists, they're gonna get old and then they're not gonna be able to perform anymore. So but who are we gonna have then? Who's gonna fill their shoes? Who's gonna give us that feeling of going to a live concert? And so give us a couple of practical things we can do to hopefully start making that change of supporting more sort of, what do you call them, Aussie grown or upcoming artists. How can we do that whilst also obviously help ourselves by having that in our life?
Well, that's what I love about Six8. So Six8 really is an answer to that question, and that is, enabling people, music lovers, to create opportunities themselves to invite a musician that is probably local. Like Daryl was a suburb away from me. Anybody can invite a musician from anywhere at any time. And in a time where we're used to looking at something, knowing how much it costs, and going, yes, I want that. Music has always been a little bit more, I don't know what the word is at the moment, but it's harder to see what an artist is valued at. And that is a change that we are actually saying to artists, you need to work out what it is that you're worth and advertise that. And that enables people to jump on. We've got an app or an online platform that you can jump onto, find a musician that's in your budget. We've got amazing artists that are studying music at a lot of the universities or the Conservatorium of Music, and they're on there for $65 an hour. So if you're going to have a dinner party, why not get a instrumentalist to come and serenade everyone and play some tunes whilst people are there with their drinks at the cocktails? And these are kinds of the events that we want to create and encourage people to create. And then at the same time, you get the beauty of connecting to an artist, their story. I wasn't involved in Six8 at this time. I was actually a guest at this party, and they had invited a Six8 artist to come and perform. And she had her guitar and her keyboard set up. Her name was Sarah Frank, actually. And it took me a moment to remember her name, but yeah, Sarah Frank. She had her keyboard set up, and she was playing, and all of her originals, which is amazing. There is so much talent, so many originals. Like, we have a lot of cover artists, but we should be listening to artists' originals because they are, as you said, the future. Well, they're now and the future. And at one stage, there was a baby crawling around, so she picks the baby up and she's got it on her hip as she's playing and singing. And then even after that, she came over and joined us, and we were in the kitchen just chatting, and it was like a handful, maybe 8 to 10 people in this kitchen. And we're talking about heartache, and someone had broken up with someone recently, and she's like, I've got a song about that. She goes and picks a guitar up, comes over, sits on the kitchen bench, and sings us this original based on a story. And so these are experiences that are open to us, but we've never really thought about it because we've only thought about it as in the context of going to the big music festivals, which have their place. And I absolutely love a good music festival. But we've got to look at ways that we can do something now in the smallness of our day-to-day lives that still impacts the future. Yeah. And that's an example of what you can do.
I was just thinking about, all the barbecues people are having. Why not get an artist to just, come and play? Or if you have a birthday party,
Absolutely.
just get them. Or if you have a golf tournament, just have them play at the end of it. Or there's so many opportunities that you could probably get someone to, even if it's just for a couple of hours. So
that's
like
the driveway jams. That was a thing through COVID. Lots of artists had started those. I would love to see communities that continue to take that on as a tradition.
That is actually
funny. Bring people together.
Yeah, that's actually funny. I think there is something similar happening. I think it's over, is it in England or somewhere around there, in the UK somewhere, and I think it's called something on your front porch, music on your front porch day or something like that. So they always have, you can sign up and then you record yourself and you send it in, and they then, but it's all happening on the same day, just to sort of encourage people to do that.
I love that. When I was in Bordeaux a number of years ago, in France, they have this one day, and I think it's across the country or it's just in Bordeaux. Every musician is playing. So from sun up to sundown, every musician is playing. And it was phenomenal because you'd be walking around, there was a jazz musician, and then there was someone playing some techno there. And then you go down, there's an acoustic an acoustic guitar, and then there's a trumpeter, and then there's a piano in the street. It was just one of the most amazing days of my life. I didn't even know that it was happening when I was there. I just happened to wander in and find it. I was like, yes, we need more of that. So that's kind of the thing that we can encourage from our councils and our communities, if you're involved in them, asking them to create something unique, so that it could be once a month. Let's put out bean bags in the local community park. You could do blankets and bean bags and blues, and have your own event in the out in the park that brings your community together around live music. And the beauty is that for every dollar that is invested in music, it gives back threefold to the community. And I think that's a super powerful message, particularly for venues. And I think at the moment there's like lots of grants that are coming out. And what we would like to see in Six8 is that people use these grants to start getting more music in their communities and in their businesses, but then understand the benefits that they're bringing, so that in the future, when those grants do start to dry up, that we don't have a big lull in 2 years' time where all of that money is gone and everything just dips. We need to use it to go, okay, we're going to prop it up, and now you guys need to take that and learn from it and continue with it. And that's one of the things that I love about Six8 and what I do as well, is help venues to be creative.
Because I'm sort of thinking while you were talking about that, just also the mental health impact it has if you go somewhere and there's someone playing a beautiful guitar piece or a beautiful piano piece, and you might have a bad day and you go for coffee and you get lifted up by that, the small impact it can have on your day. And especially after the pandemic, we need to help our mental health a lot. You probably know firsthand how it is for the artists themselves, how tough it was and how they suffered.
Yes.
So it can be a two-way street. We can help them feel better, not just financially, but also hopefully emotionally, mentally, and they can help us. So it could be such a beautiful friendship we could form through that, isn't it?
Absolutely. Well, and it is true that everyone knows that mental health has been a huge impact for the negative through COVID. And a lot of my role through COVID was calling artists. Now, we do have 1,400 artists on the platform, so I can't do this for everyone, but we've built relationships with a number of them more so. And I knew quite a lot of them that were single, living at home, and they were the ones that I'd call and check in and say, how are you going? And those are the kinds of behaviors that you get in a community. That's why we want to build a community, and we are not just a company and business. We want that community sense of connection that you get. And one of the, just on that, one of our other artists, and quite a few of them, told me that even when things opened up, everyone wanted live music before that second wave hit, end of last year. And they're like, Renée, I've been in a room by myself for months, and now I'm standing on a stage and everybody's looking at me, and I don't know how to handle it, because as a musician, you would love that beforehand. Actually, and that just made me think of ways that you can impact when you're in a really, really easy one is when you are in a bar or in a restaurant and there's music playing and they finish a song, turn around and clap. Like, acknowledge the person that's creating that background of ambience. That's probably one of the most simple things that you can do that will mean so much to that artist. Otherwise, they just feel that they're there as part of the wallpaper. And they're not. We all appreciate them. We just need to show them that we appreciate them.
Yeah. Give back to the art, which we're so craving apparently right now. So some great ideas there. Absolutely. I'm glad we covered that today. I think it's a sort of an angle that I haven't really explored yet. So I'm really grateful that we were able to have this chat and hopefully give people lots to think about and lots of ideas to then take action to as well, because it can be really simple. It doesn't have to be hard.
It isn't hard. It's definitely easy.
Exactly. Now, before we close off for today, I'm going to throw one last question at you. Yep. And I'm going to throw you with that one. But I always ask every guest if they have a song that would describe their life and or business at this moment in time, and why they've chosen that song. So which one's yours?
I'm glad that you did give me a little bit of prep for this, because if you had ever asked me that on the spot, I would have been going, there is not a hope in the world that I can answer that. But because when it came up, I instantly reverted to my fiance of all music knowledge. And he's like, okay, what's the essence of the themes? And he 100% got it in one. His first choice I went to listen to, because once again, I can't put musician with song a lot of the time. But and I'm even still trying to remember the title of it now. I know it's My Journey.
Don't Stop Believing.
That's it. Thank you. See, I don't have that. And that is definitely probably a good representation of my life. I did do one of those online quizzes, and it came up with something that was like really far from the truth. And I'm like, nope, it's not that one. But yeah. Don't Stop Believing by Journey definitely is a very strong representation of my life.
Very good. Great song.
Yeah.
And definitely something that, we all shouldn't stop doing. Keep believing in.
Yeah. No matter what adversity have been thrown at in life.
That's
it. Have an interesting life. So, yeah.
Yes, a lot of my guests had really interesting journeys, and I think that the one theme that everybody has in common is they did not stop believing that things will get better, that they can make it through, that they have what it takes, whatever it is. So, very great song. Excellent.
And not everybody has that, so it is an interesting. That's a whole different conversation.
It is
one that I get very passionate about too.
Yes. I know we probably could speak another sort of half an hour to an hour about that. However, I think we've done it. We're at the end of it. It's been an amazing chat. Awesome. I really love the angle that we've touched on today about actually talking about the artists who make the music that we love so much, or we could love if we discover them, and how we can support them. So thank you for sharing everything.
Pleasure.
Let's get honest.
I do have something for your listeners if they want, just to help them along in that, and I will read my screen to make sure I get this right as well. Sure. But there is a download that we've got for listeners around their capital city, so can't do it for every city. You can use 6/8 for that, but it's going to be a download of the what's hot and what's not is what I'm calling it, but it's the hot sheet. So it's going to be a list of artists in your closest capital city with links to listen and learn, just how easy it is that you can interact with them and even book them, maybe for one of those backyard bashes with that you were talking about before. It'll also have some guidance and ideas to get creative about how you can use live music in your day-to-day, and just some of those little suggestions, and then some little tips about how you can also have a further impact in the live music community. So that will be at 6/8, so it's six.com.au/2022 hot sheet.
Right.
And I know that you'll probably put the link in there.
Absolutely, we'll put that in there. So if people didn't quite catch that one, just check the episode description and it will all be there. And also, if you want to connect with 6/8 as someone who wants to book an artist, or you feel like you have an opportunity, or you have any feedback or anything, all the details will be there as well. So let's Aussies come together and support our local artists and music industry a bit. And for those of you who aren't in Australia, well, still check it out, because you never know, there might still be an artist that you like. So get on it.
Absolutely. We hope to go international.
Watch this space.
Yes, watch this space.
Right. Well, thank you, Renée, for joining me today. It was a pleasure. And to you B-siders, I hope you enjoyed this more Aussie themed episode on my Living on the B Side podcast. Oh my God, tongue twister at the end. And as always, I will be in touch with you guys in my next episode. And until then, I always say keep on dancing and keep on rocking, and also take good care of yourself. And until the next time, bye everybody. Bye.
Thank you. Bye.